Today, we're going to talk about a haunting, cold case that was, well, basically frozen in time for over a quarter of a century. And it was all cracked open by a single flash of light in a grainy old video. This is the story of the long, long road to justice for Sarah Miller. And really, that's what this entire story is all about, isn't it? A secret that was kept for decades, a life that was stolen, and a truth that, against all odds, just refused to stay hidden. So let's set the scene. We're in Oregon, back in 1998. We're talking about a small, quiet town in the Pacific Northwest. You know the kind of place where everybody knows everybody and people feel safe because, well, they believe nothing truly bad ever really happens there. Okay, let's go back to that one crisp autumn evening when a simple walk to a friend's house turned into a community's absolute worst nightmare. So this is who we're talking about, Sarah Miller. She was just 16. She loved her music, probably had her Walkman with her, and she had this favorite denim jacket she wore pretty much everywhere. The plan that night was so simple. Just walk 3 blocks to her best friend's house. I mean, it's a walk she'd probably taken 100 times before. She was just a normal kid with her whole life ahead of her. And just like that, she was gone. She never made it. The walk that should have taken, 5 minutes, it turned into this agonizing mystery that would go on for decades. You know, in cases like this, you'd think something would break early on, but that's not what happened here. What followed Sarah's disappearance wasn't a quick resolution. It was just silence, a deafening silence that stretched on for nearly 3 decades. The panic set in almost immediately. Her dad knew something was wrong when his page went unanswered. The whole town rallied, searching with flashlights in the dark. But as days turned into weeks, hope started to fade. Even when the FBI got involved, they found nothing. Not a footprint, not a witness, 0 leads. And here's the thing. A huge mistake was made right at the start of the investigation. The police, their first theory was that she was just a teenage runaway. But the evidence in her own room told a totally different story. Her diary, it wasn't filled with plans to escape. It was filled with her dreams of becoming a veterinarian. So, with no leads and a really flawed initial theory, the case went completely cold. The Miller family, they eventually had to move, just haunted by the memory of the street where they last saw their daughter. And that town, it was left with a permanent scar. 26 years. Just let that sink in for a minute. An entire generation grew up in that town while Sarah's case file just sat on a shelf, collecting dust. But you know, there was always this one name kind of floating around on the edge of the case. Thomas Reed. People called him the Quiet Reed. He was this reclusive neighbor who lived in a cabin out on the edge of the woods. He had an alibi, said he was working a double shift at the sawmill, and with no evidence, he was just another name in the file. And this is where everything changes. After 26 years of nothing, a ghost from the past was about to show up. Not in the woods, but on a grainy, forgotten videotape. I mean, it's the question that haunts every detective, every family member of a missing person, right? After so much time has passed, what on earth could possibly give you a new lead? Well, the answer wasn't a confession or some long-lost witness showing up. It was technology. Investigators who reopened the case used this new advanced imaging software to clean up old security footage from a gas station about 2 miles from Sarah's house. And there it was, on one enhanced frame. For just a split second, they saw it. Thomas Reed's truck driving towards the woods, and in the passenger seat, a faint, blurry, but unmistakable flash of blue, the exact same shade of denim as Sarah's favorite jacket. That one tiny flash of denim, that was all they needed. It was the thread that would lead them back to that quiet cabin at the edge of the woods, and it would unravel the horrifying secrets that were hidden inside. So, armed with a new warrant, police descended on that cabin. By now, it was derelict, totally abandoned after all these years. Honestly, they had no idea what, if anything, they were going to find inside. What they found was so much worse than anyone could have imagined. First, they found Sarah's rusted locket, something she always wore. Then they found a hidden crawl space under the floor, and inside was a complete nightmare. Evidence that linked Reed not just to Sarah, but to 3 other unsolved missing person cases from around that same time. Thomas Reed, now 70 years old, was arrested. The quiet neighbor turned out to be a serial predator who had been hiding in plain sight all along. And at his trial, the mountain of forensic evidence was just overwhelming. So, after 26 years of waiting, the final chapter of this story could finally be written. It wasn't the ending anyone would have wanted, but it was, at long last, an answer. Reed was convicted, and 4 families who had suffered in silence for decades finally had a name and a face to connect to their pain. The verdict brought some sense of closure, a finality to all those years of not knowing. But there's always one question that remains, isn't there? A question that will probably never be answered. Why? Why did he do it? To this day, Thomas Reed has never said a word about his motives, and it looks like he'll take those reasons to his grave. Today, there's a small memorial that marks the place in the woods where Sarah's story ended. The community that searched for her, that mourned her for so long, can finally remember her properly. After nearly 3 decades of being a ghost, Sarah Miller could finally be laid to rest. Sarah's story is it's a chilling reminder. It makes you ask a really difficult question. Are the real monsters the ones hiding in the shadows, or are they hiding right there in plain sight? Maybe even right